that's
that?
right.
Yeah.
You see, if Hawaii became just like any other state,
Yeah, yeah.
and everything is built up, what reason would how people have to spend the airfare, extra airfare to come here and to enjoy something that they can find back in the mainland anywhere else? And I think it's very important for us to, I use the word carrying capacity. What's our carrying capacity here on this island, on Maui, on Kauai, and on the Big Island? At what point will people say, oh, I don't want to go there anymore, because it's not what I used to like. When I first became head of the Prince Resort here in Hawaii, the Waikiki Hotel here, we had 75% Japanese visitors, and they were marketing that very well in Tokyo. So they were getting lots of Japanese coming to the hotel there, 25% non-Japanese. I thought about the United Airlines strike that we had sometime before that, and I wondered what would happen if, under those circumstances, something happened in Japan. 75% of the market in Japan, if something happens there, what kind of shape will that hotel be in if we had such a... So I talked to the owner, and we talked about maybe diversifying a bit more our customer base. And I told the owner I'd like to see half from Japan, because they have sell the market to they have people who want to come here and stay at the hotel. So we talked about 50% Japanese, 50% non-Japanese. And then in order to do that, we had to go out and we weren't worried about getting the Japanese visitors, because we were coming down, in fact. So we tried to get mainland visitors to come and stay at the hotel, more room. And we found so many instances of people saying to us, no, we don't want to go to Waikiki anymore because it's not what it used to be. And I recall the days when Waikiki was a big draw. We didn't try to sell Maui, Hawaii, or Kauai. We sold Waikiki, knowing that when people came to Waikiki, then they would take a side trip, maybe Maui, Kauai, or Hawaii. But it's getting to the point that people were saying, nope, I don't want to go to Waikiki anymore. And that's when I began to feel very strongly that we have to identify our carrying capacity. As a matter of fact, that's what we tried to do when we had the functional plan. We had the state plans that you adopted in 1978, and we had to develop 12 functional plans as a result of that. One of the tourism plan. And in the tourism plan, we talked about the carrying capacity, how many visits before people begin to say that Hawaii is no longer a place that they want to come to visit. I feel very strongly that the industry has some of that obligation to be sure that we don't overbuild. We don't get to a point where we have to keep them busy in other things. And I would like to see people come to Hawaii and stay in a hotel and enjoy being in the hotel and swimming around the beaches there, golfing or visiting our parks, or you know, looking at appreciating some of the natural attractions that we have. That's why I feel very strong, if I can digress for a moment, about us saying that we're going to charge people to go out hiking or mountains or seeing places of scenic value for us. That's not the kind of place Hawaii is. Hawaii is a beautiful place that people can come and go anywhere in the world, islands without having to pay. And when we start doing that, how much longer before we say local residents have to start paying also, as same way that visitors pay?
So, you know, there's a cultural philosophy in Hawaii, and that is the land, you know, the life of the land, and how people in Hawaii are very connected to the land. So I agree with you in this idea that visitors and people, when they come here, it's their experience with nature, with the beauty, with the ocean, the fresh air, feeling the breeze, just that total escape from kind of that crazy intensity that people from the mainland or around the world come and they just get out, they walk out, feel the breeze and the sun, and they go, ah, you know, and
Yes,
all of my family and friends, visitors that come and visit me, they always leave feeling refreshed and feeling renewed, and that renewal sense. And so your comment about, you know, keeping the land and keeping what we have available to people, the fees may be like a barrier or a hurdle they have to jump you know, to get to that special place. So it may, you know, we talk about the aloha spirit, and a lot of people worry about losing the aloha spirit. So this is kind of putting words in your mouth, but would you think if we charged fees, would that kind of take away from the aloha spirit?
I believe so.
Yeah.
Especially if they go to hiking someplace, to some mountain, some park, where they have to pay a fee. I think it's a bad message. That's what we ask them to come. That's what they say we have here in Hawaii, and that's what they ought to come and enjoy. But it's not only what we do when we charge visitors that kind of fee. The other part is, without charging any fees, there are some barriers. You know, when I was a youngster growing up, when I was in high school, we used to go to Almana Park, and we used to have moonlight picnics out there, and we bring bento and go and have there, and after 8, 9, 10 o'clock, after we get through eating, we'd sit around, we'd sing, and we'd have fellowship. Can't do that anymore. The parks, many of the parks are closed at night.
Oh, that's right.
And so the things that we used to enjoy, that was part of Hawaii, is no longer there. And I think you start from that, and you start taking away more, little at a time, extra fees for this place, extra fee for that place. And pretty soon, people begin to wonder, oh, what kind of place is Hawaii?
Right.
And not only visitors, but the residents begin to feel, you know.
And then the grandparents tell the stories to their grandchildren, and they don't experience, and the grandparents want them to experience what they experience, and they can only talk about it. It becomes a story, you know, and that's sad. That's sad, because I know what you're saying. But let's shift this conversation to, but how do we pay for the fact that there's a lot of wear and tear? There's a lot of like infrastructure in Hawaii that you probably were, and thank you, you were probably part of the creation of some of our recreational harbors and boat ramps, and through your administration, you probably created a lot of opportunities for people to enjoy, you know, getting to certain areas in the state, but they're reaching the end of life. I mean, there's a lot of structural stuff that is just, you know, 40 years later, 30, 40 years, it's time to be replaced. So, you know, we're struggling as the legislature is, you know, where do we come up with the money to do this? And what, you have any thoughts? I mean, at some point I'm thinking maybe it's been talked about, maybe we need to shut down a couple in the interim while we're having a tough time. Maybe we need to shut down a couple of these parks, but I don't know how you shut down parks in a place where people have been recreating there for 30, 40, 50 years. How do you shut them down? But, you know, so what's your thoughts on how we...
I think it comes down to payment of taxes, and at the city level we pay property taxes, and the property taxes are what designed to pay for all those things. You know, Waikiki, for example, just Waikiki, that area, carries such a large burden of the property taxes there. And then the visitors pay the transient taxes, and then they also pay the general excise tax. So visitors come and they spend time and they do pay for services that they are getting. I think that financing some of these things, that you talk about getting broken and things like that, you know, you can take a capital fund, revenue funds, or geo bond funds, you borrow, and you can build some of these things that need to be built.
Right, that's right. But you still have to have the revenue stream. I mean, we talk about, you know, there's discussion about floating some bonds to be able to do some of our repair and maintenance of parks. But they're talking about how they want to do them as a revenue bond, so that's where they came up with this idea of the fees on the parks, saying, well, we'll just do some fees, we'll raise, you know, for boaters, maybe we'll raise license fees or whatever, but the way we'll be able to float the bonds is because we can show that there's going to be this revenue stream, but again, it's impacting the users, and at what point do you impact to where what we were talking about, that it doesn't feel like people now are enjoying what makes Hawaii, which is the ocean and the beaches and the land. So, you know, I hear you on the property taxes, but then what that goes to is it now becomes more of a home rule issue, does it not? That you say to the mayor and the county council, you need to look at what's important to you and your community and tax yourselves to keep that. I mean, is that a fair?
Sure, that
fair
it
statement?
is. And when I raise the question of property taxes and the parks, I'm not saying the state should get involved there, but I'm in concept that are very important to Hawaii's people, projects, activities. And I think it becomes very important to bodies, whether it's state or counties, to look at what it does, what's more important than other things, and then prioritize.
Yes.
And you don't spend everything. I know that the state is having a hard time now with the revenues down, but you know, I went through that too. I went through, when I became governor, I went through we had a gas shock with gasoline problems. During Carter's time, we had a severe economic problem in the late 70s. Then we had Reagan years, 1982, we had 10.6% unemployment in our country, 6.6% here in our state. But what we tried to do is live within our means and try to work it out so that we didn't have to try to get additional revenues to do carry some of these projects.
Right. So how did you? Well, I love the fact now. Now you got me on a whole new subject here, and that is the fact that you said there was 6.6% unemployment, and you were trying to figure out how to live within your means. What were some of your initiatives to try to do that? I mean, did you lay people off? I mean, did you?
I was acting governor for about a little over a year, and then as I became governor in 1974, we had a huge deficit in our state, and I felt I had to do something about it. And it took me 2 years to clear up the deficit. But the way I did it was not to lay off anybody, but to tell our employees, I want them to keep their jobs. If you talk about laying off 1% of people, which 1% are you talking about? Everybody might think, well, maybe I've got to be a bit more careful. And so they start doing things with their savings, and their money spending pattern begins to affect the economy even more. So my feeling was I did not want to lay off anybody. I wanted to take by attrition, as a position became vacant, don't fill those positions. But at the same time, I wanted to be sure that services did not suffer. So I went to the government employees and I told them, I'm going to give you job security, but in order for me to do that, I have to not fill the positions, and I have to get the services performed. And they all agreed that they wanted me to do that. And they were willing to go the extra mile, do a little bit more. For example, if there were 5 people working in the area and 1 vacancy, I don't fill that. I did not want 4 to do only 4 was doing. I wanted the 4 to do what all 5 were doing. And they began to help us in that way. And that's why I never had a problem for the next 10 years when I was governor. And it was, I had a theory that you govern best when times are good. You can make all the kind of decisions you want to make when times are good. When times get bad, you're really stuck. And so the opportunity is when times are good, when the executive has to do the things that make it possible for us not to go up and down. Every 4 or 5 years, if you check the record, you go back 50 years, you'll find revenue up, not the 4 or 5 years down, revenue down, revenue up, revenue down. And if you take and spend, and by spending I mean not only spending all the monies, but returning some of that money in terms of tax reduction, what you're doing is you're going up to the level where you have revenue, and you got to come down when everything comes down. You got to go up and down like this. And that's what I think one must try to avoid. And that's why I talk about the best way is to govern when times are good. And that's when, no matter what happens, you have this steady route that you take.
But the other thing, don't you think sometimes when the times are good, you have to still say no? Because people see the money, see opportunities, want to expand, got great ideas, but you got to tell them, well, wait a minute.
That's right.
We're going to peak and we're going to come back down. So now you're going to be mad at me because, you know, now we create a program I may have to take away 2 years from now, right? Because that's the riding the peaks and valleys and making those hard decisions.
And that's what I think we need not we need to be very careful about.